brilliance among us here, and what my talk is really about seeing that brilliance in us all. Because recently I had kind of a revelation, and it was something that I understood kind of on a conceptual level, but really have integrated into a personal level in the way that I see everyday interactions. And it's really about seeing the order among chaos. It's really about making a choice of what kind of doctor do you want to be. Do you want to be a doctor that chooses to see disease, sickness, illness, learning disabilities, whatever it is, as something that's a genetic thing that has been given to us by genetics that we don't have any control over? Or are you going to choose to be a doctor that sees the world in a way where everything is an adaptation that is based on our life choices, how we interact in the world, how we communicate, how we interact with people on a human level? And so I feel like this revelation that I had of being able to see this on like an intimate level has really been inspiring to me, and I just wanted to kind of share some of my insight. Don't believe anything I said. This is just truths that I found personally, and I wanted to share with them. So, search it for yourself and see what you find to be true. So, I guess that idea that, so often when we interact with someone, we make an interaction, and if they maybe don't adhere to our values, we maybe try to go at it from a different angle and try to interact with them on a different level based on our hierarchy of values. And so when we do that, we basically sometimes get an interaction that's pleasant, that's beneficial, that we like, and sometimes we don't. And oftentimes when we don't get that, it's because we're not relating to them on our values. And what do we do a lot of times? What do I do personally maybe? Is I call them an asshole. I call them someone I don't like. And it's really because I'm failing to see their own true brilliance in who they are. I'm failing to see the correlation between my hierarchy of values and their hierarchy of values. Because we all have a unique set of values that we have that define our purpose and our vision that is unique to us. And so when we choose to see our patients or interact with anyone in the world, how are we relating their values to ours? How can their values benefit us and what our hierarchy of our values are? And so this idea of kind of finding balance, finding this order in chaos, is really about the big idea of chiropractic, that there is universal intelligence in the world. There is order. That, epigenetics talks about this idea that, our environment shapes our health, shapes our genetics. Our genetic codes are turned on and off based on the environmental factors, based on our lifestyle choices that happen, that turn on certain diseases on and off. And so that's the amazing thing, is today we're living in a world where we're seeing more and more amazing spontaneous healings happening every day. And because of the internet, we're able to see these stories that happen in Ecuador, that happen in East Africa. And it's really beautiful to be able to share that not only, but also to see these other stories. And so, Deepak Chopra in quantum healing, I don't know, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with him, but he's wonderful. I love him in terms of his ability to share about the mind-body connection, which I believe is so powerful. And that's one of the things I love about chiropractic, is it embraces that idea of that mind-body connection. And that our thoughts, our physical environment, the toxicity in our body through our diet and so on affect our health. And so, Deepak basically just talks about the body wanting to go into balance. And what a beautiful metaphor for chiropractic. That's really what we do, isn't it? We restore that balance. We help bring in a force that the innate intelligence brings back into the body and creates balance, homeostasis in the body. And, so that's why I think that chiropractic is such a powerful thing. This is a great quote I love by Lamson, talking about if our mental process is in the past, we tend to be depressed. If it's in the future, we tend to have anxiety. And yogis have found throughout time, through meditation and through breath work, that our breath can really impact our health in a huge way. And they found that if our breath is mainly exhaling, that we tend to be more likely to be depressed. If our breath is more on the inhaling end, that we tend to have more anxiety and be more manic. And so if you balance those breaths, which is what pranayama, is what meditation is all about, is finding that balance in the body. And so I love that quote, because there's many ways to find balance, and chiropractic is just one of them. And I believe it's a very whole way of finding that. So going back to the values that I was talking about originally, these are the 7 core values that were identified by DeMartini. Some people have other versions of them, but John DeMartini, I think, is a great perspective on kind of viewing the body, viewing the order in not only body but also in the world. And if you know these, when you interact with someone, it really changes the way that we interact. When all of a sudden I can look at someone and I can make observations about the way they communicate, the words they use, and I can see that they have a hierarchy of values, and I can use that to communicate my message to them. So instead of clashing with them, like a lot of times what happens between chiropractors and MDs, we are this group that, look at the world. I mean, there's all these problems, over medication, surgeries that aren't necessary, things like that. And yet, when we really look at it, doctors have a set of values that are admirable. And, a lot of times, some of their core values are, science. They're very scientific, and they really believe in the scientific method. So behind that is a value in, providing things that are reproducible, which is hard in the human body, as we know, because when I deliver an adjustment, it could have totally different impact on you than it does on you. And so sometimes in a scientific method, it's hard to show that. But ultimately, certain people have a desire to be scientific and have reproducible results. And so when we're interacting with people that have maybe different viewpoints than us, try to see where their value set is and maybe what's the need behind that statement that they're making that's maybe critical of what you believe in, and that maybe you have the inclination to call them an asshole or walk off. So, seeing the kind of underlying order behind our interactions with people. Has anyone heard of Marilyn Wilhelm? So she is this wonderful woman who basically was able to start this wonderful school in Texas. And I really love her because it's really about the chiropractic message. She basically went to the inner cities and taught some of the most difficult kids that were, drug idle, that were, abused, that were had ADD, learning disabilities. And she basically took those kids and had them go to some of the top universities in the world, scholarships. They were there's one girl that was a professor by the time she was 14. And the way that she did it was she basically found the hidden talent in each person. And she was able to see that order, even in the chaos, that even behind the seeming despair of these kids' stories, the fact that they sucked in school, that they were failing, that they were, on drugs, that they were in gangs, that she was able to see the brilliance in each of them and able to foster that integration between all these brilliant kids, cross-modalizing their interests in music and history and art and math. And they were able to learn from each other and learn how to speak independently. And so it was a wonderful way. So I have a video, but I'm not going to show it because of time. But I highly recommend Googling her because she really saw that order. She saw that universal intelligence in the human being. And I think it's a great story. So going to the mind-body connection and how we see order in disease. What is our diagnosis? When we get a diagnosis, I do a lot of screenings, which I think is a great experience for you to just go and confront people and hear their stories and hear what's going on. And, there's a lot of people that come into the screenings and they say, oh, I have, a stage 4 bulging disc and I've got a bad back, or, I have this diagnosis or that diagnosis. They're defined by their diagnosis. And it's a lot of times they say, oh, it's genetic, you know, I can't do anything. And yet there's stories all the time of people having stage 4 lymphatic cancer and disappearing like that. So they did a study in the US and Japan and found that of the spontaneous remissions of cancer, the majority of those cases, if not all, had a drastic change of awareness or state of consciousness change that happened with that. So there's a huge relationship between the mind-body that we embrace within chiropractic and that we see all the time. When we do an adjustment, sometimes an emotion comes up. So there's a link between that stored energy in the subluxation with that emotional thought sometimes. And so I just encourage you to look into that and to see the order within even something like cancer or tumors or diabetes and seeing what is the emotional state, what is the mind-body connection behind that, because that's an important element. And so, to close, I wanted just to say, there's this great story I love about Grand Central Station. And when you look at Grand Central Station, it kind of, people are walking around kind of in a very fast-paced, and it looks chaotic from the surface. And yet, when you think about it, everyone has a purpose of where they're going. They have a train station they're going to, they have someone they're meeting, and then when they change the station, that chaos increases. It seems like there's even more chaos, and yet underneath that is just a heightened level of order or intelligence that happens. And so I challenge you and empower you to see that intelligence all around us in all our interactions with people or just in the world. Thank you very much.